All right, so we're recording and I'm starting. So if you are open to chapter 16, page 342, the introduction, it's almost a no-brainer, but think about it. All the effort put into cleaning and properly cleaning and sterilizing the instruments and making sure that we're using an effective package barrier and that we're following the IPUs on everything. Storage conditions matter. So we're not just going to store things in a way where they could then become contaminated. No-brainer. So a lot of this chapter is basically about properly storing items so that they don't become contaminated. And so let's begin. We start by making sure that we sterilize everything in a proper barrier packaging. A barrier packaging is something that prevents microorganisms from getting into the package after it's sterilized, but also allows for the sterilant to get in and allows aseptic presentation of the item at the point of use. So I'm not going to read absolutely every word in this chapter to you. You know how to read. I'm going to hit some highlights though. Something that you might want to consider is the way that the work is divided up in sterile processing is things that come into the decontamination room. That is a matter of decontamination. Once it's sent to the prep and pack, that is a matter of prep and pack. Then it goes to the sterilization area, gets sterilized, then it is a matter of sterilization. And once the door on that sterilizer opens, it is a matter of storage. Okay. So storage begins when the door is opened on the sterilizer. Okay, the location of a storage area. Well, a location of a storage area should be reasonably close to the place where the items are being sterilized, but also a lot of the things that come in from the outside also need to be stored. What are outside things? Things like sterile bandages or other supplies. So these are brought into what is called a breakout room, a breakout area from, let's say, materials management. So they're shipped in on trucks, they're offloaded, they're in cardboard boxes. They've been sitting out in the elements getting mold spores on the boxes and things. You cannot just bring those boxes into your storage area because you're bringing contamination. So a breakout area is a place where you can break out the sterile items on the inside of the box and get rid of the box. And you should never bring an outside shipping container into your sterile storage area. So that's what a breakout is. A sterile storage area should be designed and used for storing sterile items only. You may see this being slightly fudged, and that's normal. And what I mean by that is, let's say that there is you have in your orthopedic section of your sterile storage area, you have your arthroscopy trays, you have your bone sets down here, you have unsterile shoulder slings that they can hang the patient's arm from. Yeah, they'll probably be stored on the same cart in the same room. But you should not store something that is supposed to be sterile in with your sterile items, for sure. And if you ever get the opportunity to set up a sterile storage area, God bless, you have made it because you are now a manager. You need to have lots of space. So I always make the comparison of Walmart aisles to Winco aisles. If you've ever been to a Winco or a Walmart or both, you know exactly what I'm talking about. At a Winco grocery store, this is not an ad. I don't work for Winco. It's not an ad. But I do appreciate the way they have set up their stores because they actually give you room to maneuver up and down the aisles without waiting for someone to move out the way. Whereas Walmart has crammed more into a smaller space. Nothing against Walmart either. It's just about space. So when you're considering floor space that is needed, you must consider things like, what are you storing there? You need to have adequate space for everything that's being stored. You need to have adequate space to store things that are purchased pre-sterilized in addition to the things that you're sterilizing on site. You need to have adequate room between aisles to allow for cart movement up and down the aisles and to allow for enough space for easy access to all the shelves. This can be challenging if you're at a place that has grown in the number of cases and instrument sets and supplies that are brought in, but not grown in the size of the department and the storage area. Then you're going to see how difficult it can be. This you can run into problems because things start hanging off the shelves, and the carts that are being pushed up and down the aisles kind of damage the wrap or knock something off onto the floor. And of course, the area should be set up to allow for thorough cleaning. Cleaning is extremely important. Now remember, we went through all of this to get everything ready. We're not just going to allow dust to accumulate on shelves, on top of packages, on the floor. We have to routinely and meticulously clean the storage area. There are conditions that items should be stored in. So you have remembered other numbers. So the department's temperatures and the department's humidity ranges apply to the department. And while it is true that a lot of departments will store many sterile items in the same room as everything else is happening, it is also true that there would be separate storage areas that have their own airflow, their own temperature, humidity, their own door. And there's nothing happening in there but storage. So in that situation, you're going to want to have airflow of 4 positive filtered air exchanges per hour. Of course, clean and dust-free as possible. You should have a temperature that may be as high as 75 degrees, but not higher. It seems kind of hot, but also humidity that has to be less than 70%. So there's no range areas with those temperatures given in the book. For further information on that, you may consult Amy, standard ST79. So remember, these new numbers apply to sterile storage and not to the department. And Denise is waiting. Oh my. Denise, were you there for a long time? I am recording this and I will upload it later, okay? Other things to consider in your sterile storage area are the external walls. So I'm sitting in the classroom and the wall right here to my left is an internal wall. But there are walls in this building where what's on the other side, if you dug a hole through, you'd be outside. So that's an external wall. External walls can tend to condensation can form on an external wall because the temperature difference between inside and outside. So storing sterile items near an external wall has to be at least 2 inches away from the wall. Nothing should get closer than 2 inches to the wall, to the external wall. You should have enough light in your sterile storage area. We humans tend to need that to be able to see. And when you have low light conditions, you end up with mistakes happening. You might not notice that something's sitting on the shelf as you just walk by. It's no longer sterile, it's been compromised. Or you might not see dust accumulating. Or you might grab the wrong set because of low light conditions. It's pretty simple there. Okay, storage shelving. Quick turn to page 346 and I will show you the shelving you're gonna have, okay? The bottom left, open wire shelving. This is the most common because it is the most affordable. But back to page 345. Closed shelving is the most preferred. So I don't know, what is your favorite car? What do you want? A brand new 2021 Mustang? That's your most preferred car. What do you drive? 2009 Kia? That's the one you have. So the most preferred shelving would be the one that best protects everything, and that is closed shelving. There's a picture of it on page 345, and it shows you can see through the glass on the door. This shelving has issues. Number one issue is it's very expensive. Number two issue is you can't store as much on it. So you will see this shelving though. You will see it in the operating rooms, in the trauma rooms of the ER, in the non-trauma areas of the ER. But you'll probably never see it in general storage. It just wouldn't work. And besides that, it's extremely expensive. Okay, on page 346 again, there's the semi-closed shelving. You'll probably see something like this in your department. I don't know what they're going to be storing on it. It looks here like they have sterile surgical gowns, perhaps. A lot of times when you see this kind of shelving, there's like a plasticky, canvasy kind of a sheet that goes over the front, so kind of act like a fourth door and make it completely closed. Again, the open shelving, this is the one that's the most common, the most affordable, the most versatile. Shelves can be arranged so that you can add more space here or there. It's a little puzzle. So, but there's things that you need to do if you're using this kind of shelves. If you look at the picture on the bottom shelf, there is it's a plastic sheet that covers the bottom shelf. Okay. This is about keeping dust from getting kicked up when people are walking by, and there's always going to be a little dust. You know, we want to mitigate it. We don't want it to land on the sterile package. And that bottom shelf that can be either solid metal or with a liner on it must be between 8 and 10 inches off the floor. 8 and 10. So as long as it's 8 inches off the floor, I don't think anybody's going to care if it's 12 inches off the floor. 8 and 10 is the rule of thumb on that. And it's not required to have a solid top shelf or a liner on the top shelf, but it's still a good idea. It's recommended. And so that's going to help to keep dust from landing on things on the top shelves. Also, in addition to the 8 to 10 inches off the floor, things should be no closer than 18 inches from the ceiling. If you look up at the ceiling in this classroom next time you're back, there's sprinkler heads. Nothing should ever interfere with the flow of the water if there's a fire. Okay. Now, when can we actually put things into the storage area? So as noted earlier, sterile storage begins when the door opens, but at that point, items are probably, in the steam sterilizer, probably still going to be too hot to touch. If it's a Sterid or an ethylene oxide sterilizer, then you know you're good. You can put them away in storage, provided that they are still intact. So with a steam sterilizer, they're going to be too hot to touch, and you should not even touch them until the temperature reads the same as the room in that picture. See, she's taking the temperature with an infrared thermometer. So if the room temperature in your department is 78 degrees, and that the temperature of the items on the cart have all cooled down to at least 78 degrees, you know, choose the biggest, most metal holding container and take its temperature. Then you can start touching it. As you're unloading the cart, of course, you're going to want to make sure that you check the chemical indicators on the outside of the trays. That's your first indicator. If you see a problem with that, you may not have sterility. There could be other issues. You should never drag or drop trays, even if they're in a rigid container. Try to avoid dropping them. Dragging them, it's a rigid container. It's not going to harm the metal, but you should never drop any tray, and you should never drag a wrapped set. This is going to cause damage to that wrap. You need to make sure that you check all the chemical indicators. Everything should at this point have a load sticker on it. It's a tracking sticker so that in the event there is ever a recall, we know exactly where that tray can be found, hopefully. They even use these, they'll put the sticker or the sticker information on the patient's chart. And then if there's a recall, they have to go through certain cases and say, well, there was a craniotomy set from this recall load used on patient X. So they look at patient X's chart, and if that number is associated with that patient from that load, then they can inform the doctor, and he can inform the patient and offer antibiotics.